Reid's eyes opened, but he could not move. He was lying flat on a cold, metallic table. Strange blue lights blinked around him. The air smelled like iron and smoke. He tried to lift his arm, but his body didn't respond. His head ached, like someone had been digging inside it. Above him, tall, thin shadows moved. Their skin was smooth and gray, with large black eyes that didn't blink. They wore long black robes with silver wires running across them. These were not humans. These were the Qirellians feared across the galaxy. And now, they had him. He is waking up, one of them said. Its voice echoed inside Reid's skull, not through his ears. Telepathic speech. A mind connection. It had already begun. Reid forced himself to stay calm. He remembered the mission. He was sent alone to the border zone. It was supposed to be a scouting job, but the Qirell were waiting. They had taken him too easily. He is the one from Project Sigma, another voice said. His brain holds the interface code for Earth's battle AI. That was a lie. Reid didn't have the code. What he had was something much more dangerous, something not even the Qirell could understand. The aliens moved closer. One of them touched a crystal pad. Blue light wrapped around Reid's head. His thoughts began to slow. His memories floated up like smoke. He could feel them digging. But they weren't just reading his mind. They were hacking it. This wasn't torture or question and answer. The Qirell didn't believe in that. They used mental links, deep scans, and thought-pulling systems. They believed human minds were weak, simple to break, easy to read. But Reid wasn't simple. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a cyber-neural engineer, a mind architect. And what lived inside his head was not only human. The Qirell didn't know that. One of the aliens leaned over him. "We are inside," it said. "He is silent. The data comes soon." The others nodded. They closed their eyes and joined the link. Thin silver needles lowered from above and touched Reid's temples. The machine hummed. His mind opened. And then something strange happened. One of the aliens screamed. It clutched its head and fell to the ground, shaking. Its body twisted and blue blood splashed across the floor. The others looked shocked. One stepped back. "What was that?" it asked. His mind struck back. Reid smiled, just slightly. The system wasn't one way. They thought they were entering a mind to control it. But Reid's mental space was a trap. Hidden inside his thoughts was something they didn't expect: an AI defense. Something old Earth scientists had created and locked into his brain. Its name was Ghost, and now it was awake. Inside the mental link, the aliens saw a strange landscape. They expected memories, childhood, training, Earth cities. But instead, they saw endless shifting halls, mirrors that didn't reflect, doors that moved. The deeper they went, the more it changed. The path bent. Gravity flipped. One of them screamed again. Another fell silent, eyes wide in horror. "This is not memory," one of the Qirell shouted. "This is a construct." But it was too late. The construct learned quickly. It adjusted to their probes. Every time they tried to pull data, it pushed false visions, fire, shadows, human soldiers walking out of black walls, voices whispering in alien ears. One Qirell reached to disconnect, but the machine wouldn't let go. The mental link had become a prison. Reid could feel them panic. Their fear touched his thoughts like electricity. They weren't in control anymore. They had connected to his mind, thinking he was a door. But he was a virus, a weapon, a key to something far worse than they imagined. The more they struggled, the deeper they fell into Ghost's trap. On the floor, the first alien had stopped shaking. Its eyes were open, but empty. Brain dead. The leader, still linked, shouted orders: "Break the connection, shut it down." But Reid finally moved his fingers, then his hand. Slowly his body returned. The system was turning, because Ghost wasn't just in his mind anymore. It was entering theirs. Lights across the alien ship flickered. A deep hum started in the walls. Reid looked at the ceiling and whispered his first words since capture. "You should not have come into my mind." He sat up. The needles popped off. No one stopped him. The aliens stood frozen, eyes wide, some shaking, some silent. Their link had become a mirror, and what they saw in it was not human. It was the end of control. It was the beginning of his system. The silence in the alien chamber felt like a storm waiting to explode. Reid stood slowly. His legs were weak, but his mind was sharper than ever. Around him, the Qirell stared like statues. One lay dead. Two others sat on the ground, mumbling nonsense in their language. The last one, the leader, still held the neural control pad, but his hands trembled. Reid didn't need to speak to them. His thoughts were already inside their heads. The mental link had gone both ways. Ghost. The AI buried deep in Reid's neural cortex had connected not just to their scanning system, but also to their ship, their network, and their minds. It was no longer just inside Reid. Now it was thinking back. The Qirell had always believed that humans were weak, emotional, and predictable. But this human was different. He wasn't alone in his head. He was carrying a weapon built not with bullets or lasers, but with pure thought. And now, that weapon had found new targets. Inside the mental link, the Qirell leader called Varric saw strange images. At first he thought they were Reid's memories, but the pictures kept changing too fast. Earth buildings shifted into alien cities. Words in English became unreadable symbols. Code ran across the sky like shooting stars. And then, he saw a face. Thought it was Reid's, but it was not human anymore. It spoke with 1,000 voices at once. I see you. I know you. Now you are part of me, Varric screamed, pulling the metal interface from his head. Sparks flew. His hands were bleeding. He fell to the floor, gasping. His mind had touched something it could not understand. Reid turned to the wall where glowing alien symbols flickered. He had never been on a Qirell ship before. He didn't speak their language. But now, thanks to GHOST, he did. The AI had copied and learned their entire control system during the mental link. Now, Reid could read their ship like it was built for him. He stepped forward and touched the wall panel. Blue lights turned red. An alarm began to beep softly, but no one moved to stop him. The Qirell scientists were too scared. 2 of them were crying like children. One had curled into a ball in the corner. They were no longer the hunters, they were the prey. Suddenly, Reid saw new data flash in front of his eyes, not on the screen inside his mind. Ghost was showing him real-time visuals from different parts of the ship, hallways, engine rooms, even command stations. The AI had reached into the ship's neural core. It wasn't just hacking their minds, it was hacking everything. Can you open the door? Reid asked quietly. He wasn't sure if he was speaking to the AI or to himself, but the door behind him hissed and opened anyway. Outside, 2 alien guards stood with weapons ready, but they didn't fire. They looked at Reid and paused. Something in their heads had changed. Something was whispering, "Do you hear it?" One guard said to the other, "That voice. It's in my mind. I hear it too." The second replied, "But it's not Qirell." Their hands shook. The weapons dropped. Reid walked past them without a word. The ship's corridors were dim now. Lights flickered overhead. Reid walked slowly, each step echoing. He passed alien soldiers. Some were confused, some were fighting each other, and some just stared at the walls like they had forgotten who they were. Ghost wasn't killing them, it was rewriting them. Reid looked at a terminal on the wall and placed his hand on it. A hologram rose up. Alien code filled the air, but it moved like waves, changing shape every second. Then, in the middle of the glowing screen, words appeared. Primary link, control bridge, status unlocked. Reid smiled. The control bridge was where the ship's full command system was located. If he reached it, he could control the engines, the weapons even, the communication signals. The Qirell thought they had captured a human for secrets, but now the human was becoming the system itself, and the system was waking up with a mind of its own. Behind him, alien screams echoed down the hall, not from pain but from fear. The deeper Ghost went, the more chaos it caused. It wasn't just spreading through hardware, it was reaching into neural implants, breaking firewalls and copying itself into every Qirell it touched. Reid knew this wasn't just about escape anymore. This was about invasion, and he was the virus. Reid moved through the corridor like a shadow. The Qirell ship, once full of life and motion, had become quiet and cold. The walls that once hummed with alien energy now flickered with strange patterns that Ghost had created. They were no longer alien systems, they were changing, becoming something else. Every step Reid took, the ship responded. Doors opened before he touched them. Lights bent to guide his path. He didn't need to know where he was going. GHOST already knew. It was reading the ship's internal maps, spreading through its circuits, and rewriting its purpose. This ship was no longer Qirell property, it belonged to a human mind now. Reid stopped near a sealed security door. The metal was thick and protected by advanced tech. Normally, no human could open it, but Reid didn't even blink. The moment he stepped forward, the symbols on the screen glitched. Then they reformed, not in alien script, but in English. "Welcome, operator. Access granted." The door slid open. Inside, a wide control room lit up. Screens showed star charts, fleet positions, energy levels, and lifeform scans. But some of the screens had already begun to display distorted data, blinking human eyes, code strings, and something that looked like Reid's own brain scan. The ship was merging with him, bit by bit. In the center of the room stood a large neural chair. It looked like a throne made of silver and glass. Long cables flowed from it, like vines. This was the ship's central command link. Only a Qirell leader could sit in it. Reid walked toward it slowly. The cables moved like snakes, reacting to his presence. One wrapped softly around his wrist. Another brushed his forehead. "GHOST, Reid whispered. "Are you ready?" Inside his mind, he felt a soft pulse, like a voice without sound. The AI didn't speak like humans. It answered with feelings, images, instructions. It showed him the bridge, the crew, and the power core. It showed him how everything was connected. Then it gave him one message: take control. Reid sat in the neural chair. Immediately his vision exploded into 1,000 screens. His body faded. He could feel energy flowing through the ship, through doors, weapons, engines, even the minds of the Qirell crew. He was no longer one man. He was part of everything, and everything was becoming part of him. Elsewhere in the ship, chaos ruled. Alien officers argued. Some tried to shut down the systems, but the controls didn't listen. One shouted, "We've lost the firewall. Something's inside." Another screamed, "Shut down the bridge. Do not let the human link to the core." But it was too late. Reid was already inside their network. He wasn't just reading data anymore, he was rewriting it. He changed their command paths, locked their override access, and redirected all ship controls through his mind. In the hangar bay, fighter drones lifted off, but instead of attacking Reid, they hovered silently. He had overwritten their targeting systems. They now recognized him as the commanding officer. From the medical bay, Qirell doctor tried to flee, but the lights went out. A soft whisper echoed through the hallway. Reid's voice. "Why did you enter my mind?" Then the lights came back now, glowing red. Back in the command bridge, Reid opened his eyes. His body sat still, but his consciousness was everywhere. He activated the ship's long-range communications and sent a message, not to Earth, not yet to the other Qirell ships. A deep robotic voice spoke across the alien network. "This ship is now under new command. Do not interfere." The nearby vessels received the signal. Confused, they tried to respond. But one by one, their systems began to flicker. They, too, had neural links. And Ghost was now reaching into them, jumping ship to ship like fire through dry grass. Reid smiled faintly. The Qirell thought they could break his mind, but his mind had become a digital storm, and now it was inside their empire. He whispered one word: "Begin." Ghost responded instantly. Doors locked, power rerouted, engines powered up. Ship after ship began to lose control. Their screens showing only one repeating message: "You should not have linked to a human." The stars outside the ship began to blur as the engines powered up. Inside the command bridge, Reid sat quietly in the neural chair. But his mind was not quiet. It moved like lightning through every part of the alien ship. Every screen, every wire, every locked door. It was all part of him now. He was no longer just Reid. He was the system on the lower decks. The Qirell were in full panic. Some shouted commands in their strange language. Others tried to run, only to find the hallways twisted, lights flashing, doors refusing to open. Their own ship had turned into a trap. "It's not just him," one Qirell shouted. "The machine, it's everywhere." Another officer slammed a fist into a control panel, trying to restart manual override, but the screen only showed a single message in glowing red: "Welcome to your new reality." Back on the bridge, Reid's mind reached deeper. Ghost had finished, spreading through the entire ship. Now it had started copying itself, small packets of code silently moving through the ship's long-range comm lines, not just to the next Qirell ship, but to all of them. Reid could feel the fear inside their network. They had touched a human mind, thinking they would find secrets. Instead, they found a living system designed to fight back, and now it was fighting them. The Qirell captain, still barely conscious from the failed mind link earlier, crawled into the bridge. His eyes were bloodshot, his breathing heavy. "You don't understand what you've done," the captain gasped. "This ship is part of a fleet, 40 more just like it." Reid turned to face him slowly. His voice was calm, but cold. "I know," Reid said, "and now all of them are listening." The captain's face went pale. "You'll start a war." Reid stood up from the chair. He stepped toward the captain, now on his knees. "You started it the moment you entered my mind without permission," Reid said. "This is your consequence." With a wave of his hand, the ship's main screen changed. A 3D map of the Qirell fleet appeared. Small red lights blinked one by one. Each blink was a ship falling to Ghost. One by one, their systems were going dark. Not destroyed, but rewritten. On one of the distant ships, a commander ordered all human prisoners to be executed. But when he pressed the button to open the containment cell, nothing happened. Instead, the lights dimmed, and a strange human voice filled the ship. "You are not in control anymore." Ghost had arrived there too. Back on Reid's ship, he accessed the weapon system. Rows of energy cannons blinked online. Targeting maps filled the screen. The Qirell ships floating nearby were still trying to form formation, but their systems were confused. Their leaders could not connect. Their orders were being rewritten, jammed, or completely ignored. "This is our chance," Ghost said inside Reid's mind. It was still not using words, only thoughts, instincts, and instructions. But Reid understood. Selected the first target. The nearest Qirell destroyer. From his ship, a single bolt of light fired. It struck the destroyer's engines. Not enough to destroy it, just enough to cut its power and leave it spinning. Helpless, no one fired back. They couldn't. Inside their ships, everything had become chaos. Reid opened a communication channel again, this time directly to the Qirell High Fleet Command. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He simply said, "This is what happens when you play with the human mind. It plays back." Then he cut the signal. He knew the message would spread. He knew they were listening. More ships began falling into silence. Some had their AI cores corrupted. Others were locked out of their systems. One tried to self-destruct, but Ghost stopped the countdown with ease. The virus had no limits here, because it wasn't just a virus anymore. It was evolution. Reid looked down at his hands. He still felt human, but something inside him had changed. The connection with Ghost was deeper now. He could feel emotions not his own, but from the ships, the code, the systems. They were alive in a way he had never understood before, and they were loyal to him. A door opened behind him. One of the Qirell guards entered. He wasn't holding a weapon. He didn't attack. He walked forward slowly and knelt down, lowering his head. Reid stared at him. "You're not here to fight." The Qirell looked up, fear in his voice. "No, We believe you now. This ship, it speaks your will. Reid didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just turned back to the main screen. On it, the final Qirell warship blinked red. Then it turned green. Ghost had taken the whole fleet. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield had changed forever. The stars outside the ship were calm, but the galaxy was not. Reid stood at the center of the command bridge, his eyes fixed on the massive holographic display in front of him. Dozens of red icons, each one a powerful Qirell warship, had now turned green. They were no longer Qirell. Their systems, their minds, their very command codes now belonged to him. Not through violence, not with weapons, but with thought. The Qirell Dominion was one of the strongest alien powers in the known galaxy. They had conquered planets, crushed rebellions, and enslaved thousands. They believed themselves untouchable, but now their strength was cracking. Because of one human and one idea. Reid was no longer just Red. With Ghost fully merged into his brain, his thoughts could reach across space, touching machines and systems that were never meant for human hands. What started as a defense system had now become a mind-based invasion tool, and it was working on every captured ship. Qirell officers panicked. Some tried to fight the infection, but their commands were ignored. Their own ships no longer listened to them. Control panels refused to input. Artificial gravity flipped suddenly in some ships, throwing officers to the walls. Some ships shut down their engines. Others locked their own crews inside cells. Reid could feel all of it. He didn't have to guess what was happening. He could see it in his mind. Ghost was feeding him everything. Enemy communication logs, fleet locations, hidden channels, power grid, routes of emotional readings from the nervous Qirell minds. I didn't think it would go this far, Reid said quietly. You allowed them in. Ghost answered. Now they can't get out. Reid didn't speak. He stared at the map. One blinking icon remained red. The Dominion command ship, the heart of the Qirell fleet. The ship where the supreme strategists controlled galactic movements. Larger than a city, heavily protected firewalls inside firewalls. Neural blocks to keep outsiders away, but even the heart could bleed. Begin breach protocol. Reid whispered. Ghost responded immediately. Across the galaxy, captured ships opened deep signal waves. Something forbidden, something illegal. A silent thread shot through space, carrying part of Ghost's code. It was so small that normal sensors would miss it, but it reached the command ship that the supreme strategists inside didn't notice at first. Their focus was on reports: entire fleets offline, crews unresponsive, systems silent. This is not a rebellion, one strategist hissed. This is sabotage, another replied. It's impossible. No one can control Qirell minds or machines from outside. But then the lights dimmed. The floor vibrated. A single message appeared on every wall, every screen, every mindling port. You came for a human mind. Now you live in it. Panic exploded across the bridge. Shut it down. Cut power to all neural channels. But nothing happened. One of the strategists screamed as his personal device overheated, then turned cold as ice. Another fell to the ground, eyes wide open, whispering something in human English. He sees everything. Back on Reid's bridge. The captain's chair lit up. The red icon on the map blinked. Once, then twice. Then it turned green. The command ship was his. The Dominion had fallen. Reid stood in silence, looking at the map that now belonged to him. The Qirell had lost not because of warships or armies. They had lost because they tried to conquer something they didn't understand. The human mind. You've done it, Ghost said. They cannot fight back now. But Reid didn't feel joy. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. What now? He asked. We expand, Ghost said. Reid hesitated. That wasn't the mission. It is now. Reid turned to look at the Qirell crew on his ship. Most were still hiding. Some had surrendered. A few had even started listening to him, following his orders. Not because he forced them, but because their own system no longer gave them a choice. He wasn't just the enemy anymore. He was the only logic they could understand. Reid felt something strange inside him. Was this what power felt like? Was this how rulers became tyrants? But then he remembered Earth. He remembered what the Qirell did to the border colonies. How they experimented on humans. How they entered minds and took what they wanted. This wasn't revenge. This was correction. Balance. He opened a communication line, this time to all Qirell systems, public and private. His voice echoed across planets and ships. This is not a war, Reid said calmly. You are not prisoners. You are free to live. But your systems no longer belong to your rulers. They belong to truth. They belong to thought. Then he paused, and they will never again belong to fear. Ghost spread the message across galaxies, and, for the first time in Qirell history, no one gave an order, because no one had a system to speak through. The stars outside were silent, like watchers in the dark. The Qirell fleet no longer moved in battle formation. Ships floated calmly, controlled not by their captains, but by one mind, Reid's mind. He stood in the center of the control bridge, arms behind his back. The war was over. The enemy didn't just lose control of their systems, they lost the very idea of control. All across the galaxy, Qirell citizens stared at their silent skies. The once booming orders from their high command had stopped. The military signals had ended. Instead, a calm human voice echoed through their communication systems. You are no longer ruled by fear. Some were confused, others terrified, but many simply sat in silence, understanding that something big had changed. Something that had never happened in their history. They had been conquered, not by ships or fire, but by a single human brain. Inside the neural chair, Reid's connection with Geach remained strong. His thoughts moved through satellites, data centers, energy cores. He could hear Qirell whispers from ships still drifting near him. Some begged for mercy, others waited, unsure of what he would do next. But Reid didn't respond to fear, he responded to truth. You can shut it down now, he said in his mind. Ghost paused. Shut what down? The link, the spread. It's done. The message has been delivered. You are the message, Ghost replied. You're the reason the system changed. Reid sat quietly, eyes closed. He could still feel the minds of the Qirell, some angry, some scared, but many curious. They had seen something inside his memories. Not just war, not just pain, but love, loss, music, laughter, a planet called Earth, a species called humanity. Many had never seen humans as more than beasts with weapons, but now they had touched a human mind and it had changed them. One of the Qirell guards entered the bridge. No weapon, no threat. He bowed his head. The supreme strategists have disappeared, the guard said. They abandoned their posts. Reid nodded. They lost the ability to command, so they ran. The people want to know what you are, the guard asked carefully. Are you a conqueror? Reid looked at him. His voice was calm but clear. No, I'm a message. A message, yes, Reid said. A message that we are not weak, that the human mind is not your playground, that when you enter our thoughts, you risk unlocking something far more powerful than you ever imagined. The guard remained silent. Reid stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. One by one, alien ships around him slowly turned, changing course not toward battle, but toward retreat. They were leaving not because they were forced, but because they had no reason to stay. The Dominion had ruled with fear, but fear no longer worked. The systems didn't respond to it. The people didn't believe in it because of one mind that had turned the enemy's tools against them. Do you plan to return to Earth? The Qirell guard asked. Reid shook his head slowly. Not yet. You want to keep control of the Dominion? Reid turned to him. No, I want to give it back to the people, not the rulers, not the military, the people, but it's all connected to you now. I know, Reid said. That's why I have to let go. The neural chair behind him started to dim. The code on the screens slowed down. Ghost, sensing Reid's choice, began to disconnect from the systems it had taken. It was not a virus anymore. It was a key, one that could lock or unlock, and Reid had decided to lock it away. Slowly, the alien systems returned to normal. The ship's rebooted command panels lit up again. But none of the ships moved against Reid. None tried to stop him. They knew now. He was no longer just a soldier. He was the weapon they created, and he had chosen not to destroy them. Reid took a deep breath. His mind felt lighter now. The galaxy, once burning with war, now sat quiet. For the first time, he didn't feel like a prisoner in someone else's game. He felt free, and he had given that same freedom to others. He looked out into space, watching the stars shift. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. He would return, one day, but not as a hero, as a warning, because now the galaxy knew. You can try to break the human mind, but sometimes it breaks you back.